About 10 years ago, I started what turned out to be the ultimate Ulster Ground Tour, which was a trip around 50 football grounds across Ulster in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and put it on the internet as the Groundhopper. 10 years on, the website's gone now thanks to AOL Hometown. But with YouTube and things like that having started up, it was suggested to me, why don't do it again as an internet blog? So, I'm on the bridge in front of Northern Ireland's most famous football ground. And let's face it, Northern Ireland doesn't really have that many decent football grounds. This is the bridge over the railway coming from Belfast that leads football fans to what is the National Stadium. And if you look along here, it's full of mementos and notes about things that have happened at this stadium over the course of the years. George Best versus Gordon Banks happened here. On this side, it's a motto that Danny Blanchflower of Tottenham Hotspur once said. Our tactics have always been to equalise before the other team score. And if you look at some of the other names in there above it, David Healy, Norman Whiteside, Ian Dowie, Jimmy Quinn, Michael Hughes versus Germany 1992, Northern Ireland versus England 1947, Peter Doherty. Then you start to realise that you're actually at the home ground of Northern Ireland, and also Irish League football team Linfield. The last bit here, Peter Doherty diving header, our Northern Ireland versus England 1947 was a famous 2-2 draw that happened here. And of course the very end bit didn't happen here. Jerry Armstrong scoring against Spain at the World Cup in 1982. This isn't mindless graffiti, this has been done deliberately by Northern Ireland fans to welcome fans to games here at Windsor Park. The game that was scheduled here today was meant to be Linfield versus Crusaders. Linfield from South Belfast, Crusaders from North Belfast. However, this was an international weekend, and last night Northern Ireland played in Slovenia and won 1-0, which was great. But Linfield had a player called up for the national team, and under the Northern Ireland football rules, or under the European football rules, any country who has a player called up has their league game postponed that weekend. So everything's shut, as you can see, in Windsor Park today, except just the gates into the south stand. The railway end is gone, it's being bulldozed at the moment. But I'm going to see if we can get in through the top gates, and if we can, hopefully get in and do a wee bit of filming, even though there's no match happening. Come round to the front of the ground. This is the Linfield badge and the Northern Ireland badge. And so here starts the first proper ground hop of 2010. Nothing super professional or anything like that, just my meandering ramble over the top of a video as we go around football grounds with what I know about them. Back to that shortly. Just while I'm walking around the outside of the ground, tell you a little bit of the history of Linfield rather than the ground itself. The club were formed in 1886. Linfield Athletic Club they were back then. It was formed by workers of the Linfield spinning mill. Just get that. That's a view you don't get very often. You won't get ever again once there's an actual stand built in there behind. That's the access in from outside. Now, they didn't play here originally. Linfield started off at a ground called the Meadow, and then it was basically behind housing, located near where Sandy Row in Belfast is today. They were moved out of there, it was far too small. They went to a place called Ulsterville Avenue in 1889, and that's less than a mile away from here. In fact, if I turn back, it's just over in that general direction there, and that's housing today, and that's where the ground was. It's less than a mile away from here. And they actually won 3 Irish League titles at that ground between, well, up until 1893. Now, when the ground was requisitioned for housing, they were made homeless. But in 1895, Robert Gibson, who's known to Irish League fans as the man who donated the trophy for the Irish League, he found a ground in a place called Myrtlefield. Myrtlefield Avenue was where they built the ground. Now that is off in that direction where that crane is and City Hospital is. You can just about see if I start to zoom in. That's the City Hospital. And then Myrtlefield Avenue's over in that direction, and that's where the ground was, where Linfield played until 1904. Wasn't a great ground either, admittedly. So by 1904, befitting a team that were dominating Irish football at the time, they came to this place. Now, it was known then as the Bog Meadows, and I'm sure Glentoran fans will have a good chuckle at that. And it was laid out in time for August 1905. Some of the housing was built by then, but when people arrived here for the very first game, which was meant to be against Distillery, who were then known as Belfast Distillery, now known as Lisburn Distillery, it was the last Saturday of August 1905, and as you can see, it's been absolutely chucking it down today. Well, it was even worse that day. The rain was so heavy that this area where I'm standing here now, which obviously wasn't tarmacked back then, it was just all laid out on cobbles and dust, I suppose. It was just completely waterlogged, and that entrance down there, people couldn't get in. The pitch itself, they said, was playable, but the concourses were flooded and the paths around here were flooded, so there was just no chance of playing a game of football. So the game against Distillery was called off, unfortunately. The following Saturday, the Irish League football season kicked off for the first time, and as luck would have it, Linfield's opening game was against Glentoran. Glentoran weren't the big rivals that they are today for Linfield. Today they formed Belfast's Big Two. Back then, Glentoran were just pretty much another Belfast club. The match attracted about 2,000 people and was won by a 75th minute goal. It was scored by a gentleman called Soy, according to the information I have. Northern Ireland began playing matches here from about 1914, 1915. Before then, they preferred to play their games at Cliftonville Solitude Ground, or even the Ballinafay grounds that were home to Ulster FC at the time. They're long gone now. If you were to come to Windsor Park to watch a game of football, if you're going to come from Belfast city centre, it's about just short of 2 miles away, and it's a 8-minute drive, and you would come off the Lisburn Road onto Tate's Avenue, which if I zoom, you can just about see Tate's Avenue from where I am here. And then as you carry on down, there's a turn off to the left, and that brings you into Windsor Park here off Olympia Drive. If you're going to walk, it'll take you about 35 to 40 minutes to actually walk to Windsor Park from City Hall in Belfast, although I wouldn't recommend it in a day like today. And if you were going to get the train, it's probably the easiest way to get to Windsor Park, then you get a train to a station called Adelaide. Now the bridge I was on there earlier on, you can see Adelaide from here. It's literally a stone's throw from the ground in that direction, and you just walk down through the streets behind that, up onto the bridge, and that'll bring you over. On a day that there's a match taking place, those gates are all open. Today obviously they're closed. A train from Great Victoria Street will take you about 8 minutes to get to Windsor Park. It's one stop, literally, and a return fare from Great Victoria Street to Adelaide's £2.70. Okay, this is me physically coming into the ground, and it's at this point that I'm probably expecting somebody to come and ask me what I'm doing, because obviously with the game against Crusaders having been called off, there's nobody here today. Normally at this time on a Saturday, this concourse is pretty full. As you can see, there's coffee shops and burger bars, which on a normal Saturday would be pretty much hiving. So I'm going to go and find somebody first, and then just carry on filming.